Alright, we are back on our Project 1, the vector shapes, using the shapes tools and the pen tool to create a celebrity portrait. Right. So I've put my photograph on outline mode, and I'm going to take it off of outline mode, put it on preview, so Command Y since I have a Mac. This is where we left off, but I think for this one, I'm going to start building up some more of the body parts, such as the ear, the nose, the mouth. Okay, so just like how what I've done with the hair, with the skin, and with the shirt, working from the back coming towards the front, I'm going to add a new layer on my layers panel. But I want to make sure that I lock all of my other layers. Okay, so those are all locked. I'm going to double click, and I think I'm going to title this one the mouth layer, and press OK. Alright, you can use the pen tool for this assignment. I would really like to see you use pen tool about 50% and the shapes tools about 50% as well. The pen tool might be helpful when it comes to his mouth because it's so precise. I feel like you can't really get that even using the ellipse tool and the direct selection arrow. So I'm actually going to go back to my pen tool, but before I do that, I'm going to go to my eyedropper and again pick up some of that base color. Since we're working from the back to the front, it might be smart again if we pick a color that we can layer upon, since this is almost again like a digital watercolor, digital acrylic painting. So I'm going to see what it picks up. That's way too dark. Not happy with those colors. You can always modify and adjust. So we're coming out kind of dark. So I'm going to double click on my fill. I'm going to lighten that up a little bit in my color picker. I'm satisfied with this color. I'll press OK. Now I'm going to go to my pen tool. And I know that all of my smart guides are coming up. That's okay. I'm going to draw some curves using the pen tool. I'll hold down my option key and get the handle. I'm going to redirect it into the direction that the pen tool, that my path is going in. I'm going to simply just take that handlebar, move it upward. It's like he's got a divot right there. Get a little bit of that lip. Hold down my option key, get the handlebar, point it in the correct direction. Now I'm going to come back full circle. Alright, so if I take it off of outline mode, so Command Y, you see that I have the very beginnings of the mouth. Okay, I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so now that I have the shape here, I'm still on my mouth layer. Let me go back to my layers panel. This tutorial is really going to talk about how do you layer the values, how do you layer and start to define your shapes a little bit more. So let me get back on outline mode. I need to click off of my shapes. I'm going to click on the selection tool. I get my bounding box. I'm going to click outward. There's a few ways how you can handle this. If you are familiar with working with watercolor in particular, you know that you start off light, you work your way to dark. So if I was going to take my shape, go back in outline mode, I'm going to take it, I can always copy and paste. So I'm going to press Command C and then Command V, and I have just copied and pasted that shape. But what's kind of cool is you can double click on your fill, You can make it a somewhat darker value. Okay. You can also adjust the opacity, which is at the top here. It's on our top toolbar. I have my fill, my stroke, different types of stroke, the style of my graphics. But then opacity, that can be used to your advantage for this assignment. So I'm going to slide it over to close to 70%. Okay. I'm not seeing really an effect just yet because I just placed it on top, but if I take my shape and I resize it, I can get the effect that there's possibly a gradient happening here. So Command Y, let's go back, and I can adjust it as needed as per my photograph. I'm not holding down the Shift key because I want a little bit of a jagged gradient here. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. Like I said, use copying and pasting your shapes and adjusting the opacity to your advantage. So, if I was to even go further with this, the teeth are actually going to have their own separate layer. It's just a lot easier to handle that way. But if I'm going to take that shape one more time, I'm going to select it, Command or Control if you're using a Windows, C, Command V. I get that same exact shape that I had. I want to make it a darker value, so I'm going to double click on my fill, pick out a darker value. Okay. I still want to keep my opacity not at 100%, but at 70%. So let's put this down. And for right now, we can sort of gauge it, but I would prefer to actually try to follow the picture as best as I can. So Command Y. And now I can see without holding down the Shift key. Okay, so Command Y. Alright, I don't want to make, let's go down a little bit. Let's go even further with this. You can take your direct selection tool, your white arrow, I can click on my anchor and I can modify it even further, just like how we've done with our shapes tools. Use the direct selection tool to your advantage to move the anchor points where you need to move them. So if I'm going to really tuck it in there, okay, I can click off of my shape. Let's take this one out here. You can also adjust the curvature by clicking and dragging the handlebars. So if I want to take this and actually move it out here, and then let's take that one, move it a little bit down. Okay. So now I have a little more of a gradient definition. There's a lot of going back and forth within this process, and that's okay. Alright. Okay. I'm going to go back to my layers panel. And I'm going to lock my mouth layer and take it off outline mode for a second. Okay, I'm going to go back to the skin mask layer. I'm going to unlock it. I made sure that I locked my mouth layer. I'm going to click on my skin mask layer. I want to try to attack some of these shadows, particularly underneath his chin. It's just another example and how to conquer the different value changes. So again, if you remember, Command Y, it's all pretty light, but he's got some definition down here. This might be a space where, again, I'm going to try to use my pen tool, but before I start, use my eyedropper, click on some of the values there. Those are quite dark. So I'm going to double click on my fill to get a much lighter value and pick up in this range. Okay. Now I'm going to take my pen tool. He's got a pretty defined shadow underneath his ear. So I'm going to start up at the ear using my pen tool. Just click and drag. Okay. I'm going to hold down my Option key. Alright, let's see what that has done. Okay. I'm actually not happy with how that's going, so I'm going to press Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. Okay. Would much rather start down here, so I'm going to click over on his collarbone. I'm going to outline this mass that is here using the pen tool. So simply clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. And remember, I extended where his shirt ends. Okay, so I'm actually going to hold down the Option key and take my handlebar, move it down. Let's define it right there as well. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to hold down my Option key. Now I'm going to follow where that ends. And I'm just going to go through and create a subtle shadow. Let's get it up here. Okay. Over to his neck. Take my handlebar. Move it downward while holding the Option key. Go back up to his ear. Take my handlebar, move it down. Go underneath his ear. And then try to come almost full circle with this shadow. Okay. So I have it working for underneath his face, but I have an issue here. It looks like I have a little bit that has been placed onto his face. That's okay. I can use my delete anchor point tool, so I'm going to delete my anchor point right there, delete it up here, and now it's all cleared up. I've blocked out my essential shape, but I'm going to press Command Y. Let's work on some of these handlebars here. I'm going to use my direct selection tool because it's a little bit easier to modify. So I'm going to just simply pull and take it. Don't feel that there should be an anchor point there, so I'm going to go to my delete anchor point tool. Now I have a nice curve going straight down. I'm going to press the A key to go back to my direct selection tool. I'm just going to grab it, click it and drag it, grab it. Okay, you'll notice that that's cleared it up quite a bit. Command Y. I want to extend this out a little bit further, so I clicked on the anchor point. I'm going to make that a little bit thicker, but then I'm going to take this handlebar and extend it to make it a longer handlebar. So now that looks a little more natural. Okay. So I have my basis for that shadow right there to define between his chin and his neck and chest area. I'm going to take this anchor point and try to move it right there. Okay. So really a lot of going back and forth, back and forth. Okay. But now I want to add more definition. So this is the point very similar to the mouth. I'm going to look back and see what is going on here with the values. These shapes are a lot more organic, so it may be a smart idea again if I use the pen tool to define these shadows. So I'm going to take my fill, double click, I'm going to choose a little bit darker value, press OK, and now I'm going to go in, I'm going to start working on these areas. So he's got a really dark area, dark shadow right here, just by taking my pen tool. Okay. Use my option key to move the handlebar. It's really a process of going back and forth between pen tool and using the handlebars with your option key. This is really rough. Again, this is sort of blocking it out, that organic shape that is underneath his defining area of his chin. Okay. So Command Y. Got really dark all of a sudden. So what I'm going to do is keep that shape, select my main one, it got darker by accident. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. Okay. This area that I just vectored out looks extremely dark, so this is where you would use opacity to your benefit. So I'm going to take my opacity and I'm going to lower it. 15% is quite low, but let's make it about 18. So that would be an example of one area for value. So let's go back. If I take this, I'm going to Command C, Command V. Let's get it off of outline mode for a second. And I put it on top there. Okay. This is again another good example of layering, very similar to the mouth, where you may want to create a little bit of a gradient effect. I'm keeping my opacity very low because, as I'm always pointing out in these tutorials, this project is very much like watercolor. So you're really better off in trying to make your values very light in the very beginning and then making them darker as you go along. So I've taken my direct selection tool because it's very easy to manipulate your anchor points, customizing them to where you need them. Okay. Take it, move it down. That can be moved way down. Let's see how that's going. Okay, so I'm off to a little bit of a start with my values right underneath his chin. Okay. Let me touch a little bit on the ear, so I'm going to go back to Window, Layers. I'm going to lock my skin mask layer, making sure that I click on my top layer, which is the mouth. I'm going to create a new layer, double click, and I'm going to call this the ear layer, and press OK. This would be a great opportunity, I feel, if I could make it with the ellipse tool. So let's take it off outline mode for a second. I'm going to use my eyedropper and I'm going to pick out my original color because I want to use that as a base for right now. Let's put it back on outline mode. I'm going to take my ellipse tool. I'm going to click and drag out roughly about that size. And now I'm going to create a bounding box by clicking on the regular selection tool, turning it slightly, but ears, body parts are not perfect. So I'm going to take my direct selection tool, my white arrow, click on anchor points and start messing with it. Okay, so that looks a little too perfect there. I want a little bit less for the earlobe, but I may want to drag this down so I can create a nice curve right there. And it looks like there, and there we go. Alright, so that's a pretty nice shape for the ear. It's starting to really come together on a really basic level, which is nice. Okay, let's go back to Command Y. Noses are some of the hardest body parts on features on the face to take care of. So before I get started, I'm going to lock my ear layer. I'm going to create a new layer, double click, calls this the nose layer. Okay. Here's the problem that you're going to run into if you use the pen tool or if you use a shapes tool. Form a shape the same color as your base of your skin tone, your nose is going to get lost. When you usually draw a nose, I'll draw this as just an aside, so let's get off of the artboard for a second. So if you draw a regular nose as an aside, what you're really drawing, let me go a darker color, you're really drawing the shadow because you take care of that nostril area around the nostril, which is technically a shadow, a little bit of that ball if it's a 3/4 view, again maybe the nostril if it's a shadow, and then the outside. Even for the top part of the nose, you don't particularly draw the entire thing, you draw just the shadows that are butting up to the edge of the eyes. Sometimes you might draw the little shadow that's underneath the nose, but my point is you never really see a portrait, you're not really going to draw the nose as just one big shape that looks kind of like a hoof. You're really concentrating on those shadows. So the same principle applies with this exercise. So let me go back to my layers panel. The same principle applies. So if I go back on preview mode for a second, I want to get my fill, that's our base skin color for him, then Command Y. What I really want to focus on for my nose, I'm going to make this a little bit darker value because I'm going to vector out the shadows using the pen tool. So I have my little bit darker value. I'm going to take my pen tool now. And really, honestly, the size of the nose are pretty important. Let's take it in that direction. Okay, I'm not happy with that, so I'm going to do Command Z. Let's start from over here. We have a shadow that denotes the corner, the side of the nose. So I'm going to create a curve. Okay, hold down the Option key. Hold down the Option key. Okay. So if I take it off, that's one side of the nose. So I'm going to get my bounding box. And now I'm going to continue. What's nice that where I'm not working in vector paths with strokes is you can layer them on top of each other on the same layer, and there's going to be they'll all blend together, which is nice. I'm going to go back with my pen tool and concentrate now on this underside of the nose. Hold down my Option key. Let's get it back to the shape using my handlebar. Okay. So it is starting to come together here. I'm done with that path, so I'm going to click off on it, go back to pen tool. You may want to concentrate on this little area right here. Go back full circle. Go back to my selection tool, pen tool. I'm going to take it, start working on that outer shadow of the nose. Option, hold it down, let it go, let the handlebar go in the direction of the curve. Okay, now I'm going to come back over. I'm going to create that shadow, just take it off. So as you can see forming right now, that's a little more believable as a nose versus trying to put a triangle shape down or a rectangular or a curved rectangle and maybe some ellipses here or there. So really the best way, trust me, the best way to get through the nose is to really concentrate on those shadows. So let me go back, and I want to do one more. I want to do the one, well, two. I want to do the one from his sunglasses and the one right underneath his nose. So I'm going to go to the pen tool. Now this shadow looks a little bit lighter, so after I get done vectoring it, I'm actually going to lower the opacity on this so it's kind of low in comparison to the rest. So let's go back. I'm going to click on that shape. I'm going to lower my opacity of it to about 74 and see where I am. It's at 100%. Let's make it a little bit lighter. Much better. A lot more believable. Let me do this final one for his nose. I'm going to take my pen tool, but I actually, well, since this is our defining point, that should be a stronger opacity. So I'll keep it at 57% for right now. I'm going to take my pen tool and just start vectoring out. So Option, let's hold down Option key to get the handles. It's okay that I'm going up into the sunglasses because the sunglasses are going to be one of the last layers that we cover. Take the handlebar. Let's go up. Let's go. I'm actually going to be more or less tracing on the same path line. I come full circle. Okay, so if I click off, it looks a little strange. So, and also too, if I zoom in, I have a little bit of a hairline that's dividing those two paths. So one easy fix that I can do with it, I can take my direct selection tool, click on that anchor point, and then just simply move it. Move that handlebar to move that curve in. I want to make the opacity of this shape a little bit lighter, really similar to under his nose, because it's not as important of a shadow. It's not our defining shadow. Okay. His nose is definitely on its way. This is a much easier solution and it will save you time. Okay. So what I would like for y'all to do this week is just concentrate on building up different body parts of on the face, and really concentrate on building up different shadows for this week.